Hello, everyone. Welcome in to 98.5 WJHI, LP Jeffersonville, home of the Red Devil Network. Today is April 20th, 1 o'clock. I'm Clay Abels, the WJHI Sports Director. With me today, the Director of Greater Clark County Schools, Superintendent Mark Loeffner. How are we doing today, sir?
Great. Thanks for having me back.
And we have a special guest with us. Last week was Miss Karen Wesley, the Director of Elementary Education. Now this week with us on April the 20th is our new principal, the head of Jeffersonville High School, Pam Hall. How are we doing today, Miss Hall?
Wonderful. How are you doing today, Clay?
Doing great. Another update for us here and another edition of School Talk, a chance for us to give a little more update on things that have happened since the last time we spoke with Mr. Loeffner. There's been a school board meeting and also a couple changes going around not only in the state but throughout the school system. So we'll give some updates on that. This week we're going to do last week was student theme. This week is adult theme. We're going to have parents sending in some questions and having some things answered. First, I'll let Mr. Loeffner lead the way. What is the latest, Mr. Loeffner, from school dates and also the latest from your last school board meeting?
Yep. At the meeting, I will say congratulations to Miss Hall for being named principal of Jeffersonville High School. We did that at the last board meeting. Also, congratulations to Laura Hubinger, who will be our new CFO that's coming into Greater Clark from up north. Has around 13, 14 years of experience as a CFO in a school district up north. Will be a great addition to Greater Clark. Also, the board approved various contracts. Probably the big one was with the Moats Group to go ahead and begin work on the turf field projects, the track projects at Jeff High and also Charlestown High. So, you can look for those to begin as far as construction probably around May 1st. They're going to start demolition of bleachers, demolition of, the inside the track in terms of cleaning that up. And so they'll really get going here in a couple of weeks, and you'll start seeing some changes at both Jeff High and Charlestown High. They're also working on the bleacher projects at New Washington Middle High School. So, the board approved those items. So things are moving forward, and we're looking forward to those things, getting done.
And those are some of the questions that will be asked by our parents this week, and we're going to go right into that with Mr. Loeffner on asking some of the parent-themed questions for this week of School Talk. The first question, Mr. Loeffner, is to do with e-learning. Currently, Greater Clark on an every other week schedule for e-learning. One of the parent questions is, why not do every 2 to 3 days to keep the students engaged? What was the decision process to go to every other week for e-learning?
Yep. Well, when we initially looked at this, there were a couple of concerns. One concern was, we had a lot of practice with e-learning. We have done some practice days in the fall, and then actually had 2 e-learning days here in the January-February time period. And one of the things we learned was that we wanted to be careful with it. We didn't want to overwhelm our parents and didn't want to overwhelm our teachers. So we thought the alternating weeks would be the best model for us. We'll really get after the e-learning for a week, and then the parents will have a week to sort of, get caught up, relax for a week, then get geared up for the next week. Because it's different. I mean, it's different for our teachers. It's different for parents. It can be very intense, especially as a parent if you have more than one child and you're dealing with children that are in multiple grade levels. So we just felt like that was the best route. Now, if we have to do prolong this, and say we have to do this in the fall, we may look at that. In terms of doing 3 days a week or 4 days a week, but right now we're going to stick with the alternating weeks until May 1st, and then starting on May 1st we'll go continuous e-learning from May 1st to May 15th, except on the weekends, and then the last day of school will be May 15th.
These next 2 questions are on the sanitation process. The first question is, what materials are being used in the schools for cleaning of sanitation going forward at this point? I know a lot of schools are doing deep cleaning and trying to make it as germ-free as possible. What is used in the sanitation process to get the schools back to as healthy as possible?
Yeah, right now, we're keeping everybody out of our schools. We're allowing staff to come in on Mondays, teachers, to get their things and get prepared for their e-learning. But other than that, nobody is in our buildings. We have met with a couple different companies that we feel like they can help us come in and do some deep cleaning. Other than that, our custodians will use the chemicals they typically use, to go in and deep clean and make sure that surfaces and handles and doorknobs and things of that nature are cleaned, without getting into specifics of the names and all that. They're all chemicals that kill the COVID-19 virus, so we feel good about that. And really, we're waiting for that stay-at-home order to be lifted, to where we can get our custodians back in the buildings, our maintenance crews back in the buildings, and get back to work and really get them in there to deep clean everything we need to. And then when we do have staff or students come in, whether it's to pick up their things or teachers just to come in and prepare for e-learning, that we do a heavy deep cleaning after they leave the building.
And to follow up with that question, I know you mentioned custodians. Are we using any other professional outside services for cleaning, or is it strictly through the custodians at the moment?
Right now, it's through the custodians. We have, like I said, we've met with a couple companies that could come in and help us. Especially like a situation where, if we allow our students to come back in the buildings and spread that out over several days, we would want to deep clean at the end of each one of those days, for the next group to come in the next day, and so we're looking at doing something like that with a couple different companies. Also the filters, making sure we have the correct filters that would filter out as many viruses and things like that, and take care of the filter situation. So, that right now that's what we're looking at, but we're just waiting for the stay-at-home order to be lifted.
Now, this question is from Ms. Hall, Pam Hall, with us here today, along with Mark Loeffner on another edition of School Talk, April the 20th. Ms. Hall, obviously e-learning a big situation for you to deal with right now, stepping into the principal role. What has been the feedback you've received so far on e-learning from the teachers and the students? What's been the biggest problem, and also been the big success you think so far from the e-learning?
Yeah, well, I think that from a teacher's standpoint, they are very appreciative of the week on, week off. It allows them to really plan and make sure that they are able to hit those really important standards, because it is so different than being daily here. Also, it has allowed us to have a plan is what if one of our teachers gets sick? So we have, as an administrative team, planned through our academies if a teacher in the freshman academy were to get sick, so that either Miss Hare as a counselor or myself as that still kind of that administrator could step in and take over those day-to-day activities. It's allowed us to plan for that, but also to monitor with our students and kind of see. Probably the biggest challenge has been households that have a lack of internet access. Those households that have traditionally gone to the library or gone to a local establishment that provides that free Wi-Fi, or some that have Wi-Fi, but they have multiple children, and they're trying to navigate that and still working, or illness there. So I would say that has probably been one of our biggest challenges. And as far as just a success, is I've just been so proud of our Jeff High staff, because they are accepting the challenge. I mean, we have gone from really overnight to an e-learning plan for that snow day or 1 or 2 days of snow day or a sewer line break to being a virtual school. And we have hit the ground running on that, and I'm just so proud of them, and tell them, every time we have our weekly staff meetings, that you can't do this wrong. We're just kind of learning as we go along. And if you keep student focused first, there is no wrong way to kind of go forward with that.
And to go off that for Mr. Loeffner, what do you think changes will be next year with Ms. Hall talking about the e-learning and how adjusting to it during this time period? What will the changes potentially be going into next year for e-learning, say if we have to start off the school year from home? What changes have you seen so far that you'd like to amend for next year, maybe add on?
We would maybe amend the calendar, like I said, maybe doing it 3 days a week or 4 days a week versus alternating weeks. We would definitely take a look at that. I think we would have to look at the grading policy in regards to e-learning. That's something, we're going to have to really nail down a little better. That's right now we're a little looser on that, and we would need to tighten that up. So those are probably the two big things: the calendar and just grading. I think our teachers in the district are doing a pretty good job of putting together lessons that engage students, that keep learning going on. So, we feel good about that piece.
This is the last question for you, Mr. Loeffner, on e-learning, then we'll move towards some different questions with you and Ms. Hall. But how is Greater Clark at all we've seen a lot of different school systems throughout the area put out their version of e-learning and what their plans are. Is there in any way that Greater Clark County Schools is following JCPS's model over in the Louisville area? What's kind of the decision making between all the different school districts, and where does Greater Clark stand in terms of e-learning as a whole?
Well, I would like to think that we're the leader of all those school districts. I mean, it's something that we jumped into last year at this time, last spring, and started training, started putting plans together. Like I said, last fall, we did training with our teachers, with our students, with a couple practice days, and then actually did a couple of e-learning days because of the weather and the Red for Ed rally day that we made up on President's Day. So I really believe we're ahead of the curve, and we're ahead of a lot of these other districts because we already had a plan in place. We had already done training with our teachers and students. We already have a one-to-one initiative going on within our district. I think, we're leading the pack, if anything. We're doing a very good job with it. And we actually have other districts calling us, asking us questions about how to do e-learning. So we feel good about where we're at.
And this question, to start off with, is for Ms. Hall, but also for Mr. Loeffner as well. Parent question: what has been the hardest decision you've had to make during the pandemic for the school system? What's been the most difficult? I'll have you start off, Ms. Hall. Obviously, I know it's been a much different situation for you and Mr. Loeffner, both coming in just in your first year. What's been the toughest thing for you to adjust to so far?
I think for me, going into this role has been really locking the school down for teachers and our staff, because they are so dedicated that they want to get in here and to provide the best quality instruction that they can. And it's been really having meetings with them and trying to identify what we kind of call those power standards, or what is it that a student that in your class to finish up this quarter needs to know and must know going forward, and having them, because our staff and teachers do such a wonderful job of engaging students, but really having to kind of go to that virtual model and do that. I think that's been probably the toughest part. And then also not allowing them access to their home. I mean, teachers and staff that work here spend more time usually at school than they do at home. And so just being in here, getting in the building, and then also having to work with senior families on the devastation that, a rite of passage is being taken away from kids, and how heartbreaking that is.
Same thing for you, Mr. Loeffner. What's been the toughest thing for you thus far to deal with during this pandemic?
Well, Ms. Hall just hit on one of them, just the fact that a lot of these seniors are going to miss out, on spring sports, going to miss out potentially, they're going to miss out on prom, and we still don't know what we're going to do with graduation. We want to do something. We just don't know what that's going to look like. So, those type things are really disappointing that the seniors aren't going to get to do those things. The other thing, in terms of superintendent, our cabinet, our school board, is communication, just making sure that the cabinet, our principals, our leadership team, that communication is still there. That everybody understands what we need to do, and everybody's on the same page, which so far, and I have to give my cabinet credit because they've done a great job. Melissa Bauer, Karen Wesley, Kim Hartledge, Natalie Turner, Tom Deichel, just Chad Shank. They've done a great job of communicating with their people, and that's probably, but it's been tough. We've had to really work hard at doing that.
I'll start with Mr. Loeffner on this one, but it'll also go to Ms. Halls. What's been a positive from the pandemic, something you can take going forward that you think will increase the level of Greater Clark County schools, and something that they can use for the future, that is something that it's obviously a negative time, but something that's a positive that's come out of the situation? In terms of positives, I'll lead with Mr. Loeffner on this one.
Sure. Well, I think probably the thing I'm most proud of is that, the people that within our district haven't panicked. And I think a big reason for that is that we had a plan put together on how to address this, and everybody was on board with the plan, and nobody's panicked. Everybody's doing the best they can with this, including parents and students. And I think, everybody believes that, we'll get through this and we'll be fine on the back end of this. But that's what I'm most proud of, is that we had a solid plan put together. Nobody's panicking. And everybody understands the situation, and we'll get through this just fine.
And same thing to you, Ms. Hall. What do you think is something that's positive that has come out of this pandemic, especially now you being principal, something that maybe you can use for yourself to help lead the staff and the students?
Right. I think the biggest positive that I have seen is that it's really allowed our staff and even our students to take a step away and say, wow, I really miss school. I can't wait to get back. And so in some way to reinvigorate staff, it's especially here at Jeff High, the pace is so fast. We always joke that, people don't understand the belly of the beast until you're in it here. And I think that that's really been true, but just hearing across the board from our teachers and staff just how they are so anxious to get back. And even our students, those kiddos that maybe in the past that you would be surprised to hear, and they're saying, I miss everybody. I can't wait to come back. So I think going forward, we're going to see a real energy or a real energized staff and student body when we do return, hopefully in late July.
Here on another edition of School Talk on April the 20th with the new principal of Jeffersonville High School, Pam Hall, along with the superintendent of Greater Clark County Schools, Mr. Mark Loeffner. This is another question from the parents that is directed to both of you, is starting for the next school year and maybe even before, if you're someone that's moving into the Greater Clark County area, and I'll lead with you, Ms. Hall, because specifically with Jeffersonville High School, what would be something and what are the main reasons why, as a parent or as a student, they should choose Greater Clark County Schools to go forward with their elementary, middle school, and high school career? What is the things that make Greater Clark County special for parents and people moving into the area?
Right. Well, I think that we have so many unique things to offer here at Jeffersonville High School and in Greater Clark County Schools, but through that lens of Jeffersonville High School, I think that what we are doing with our facilities, with our football field, with the turf and the new bleachers, that's exciting. But I think probably the biggest draw that I would have for families right now is to really take a look. If you look at what the surrounding school corporations are doing, they had to reach out to Mr. Loeffner and to Greater Clark County Schools to see what we were doing in this situation. So I always say, and I told my staff this, if we prepare and are ready to go on our worst day, everything else falls into place. Well, Greater Clark County Schools, under the guidance of Mr. Loeffner, we were prepared as well as any school, I would even say, in the country. And so for the surrounding areas, we are the leader. People are looking to us. If that's not a reason enough for parents to say, Greater Clark County School is where I need to be, then maybe they need to examine that.
And then for you, Mr. Loeffner, same question, but more of an overall perspective, not just Jeffersonville High School, but what makes Greater Clark County Schools so appealing from Charlestown to New Wash all the way down from middle school to elementary?
Well, I've been in this district for 15 years, going on 15 years, and what I see in this district is we have very talented people in this district that care about students and want to do whatever they can to make sure students are successful. And to me, you just have to look at the data. When you look at the data within Greater Clark and compare it to other districts around us, Greater Clark has a graduation rate that's right there at the top. It's well above the state average. Greater Clark has the highest non-waiver graduation rate. And what that means is we have the lowest number of percentage of students that graduate needing a waiver. We beat all the districts around us, including New Albany, Floyd, and including West Clark. We beat those districts with the non-waiver graduation rate. Now, why is our non-waiver graduation rate higher than those other districts? I think it has to do with our academy model. The academies of Greater Clark, when you look at that model that we provide in our high schools with the different pathways for our students are able to go through a grad pathway and graduate using that grad pathway model. So that's a couple things. I mean, when you look at just what we do as a district with curriculum instruction, we're very in tune with what's going on. Up-to-date practices, pedagogy. You won't walk into a classroom in Greater Clark, or you won't walk into a school where it's like you're walking back into 1980. That we're a very progressive school district. We're always looking for new ways to engage our students, to make sure that our students are ready in terms of college and career. Another item you could look at are dual credits. A lot of people don't know this, but Greater Clark, there's 24 high schools that feed into Ivy Tech, Ivy Tech is their dual credit partner. Greater Clark County Schools had more students earn associate's degrees from Ivy Tech before they graduated from high school than any other school district in this area, out of those 24 high schools. So, those are few things, but we're doing a lot of things right in this district when you compare, what we're doing to other districts. And I can assure you, if you choose to bring your child to Greater Clark, they're going to get a good education. They're going to have numerous opportunities, in elementary, middle, and high school, and they're going to walk out of our schools being prepared, for the world, for a college experience or a career experience. And that's probably, if I had to choose, that's why I'd bring my child to Greater Clark.
These next few questions are for Mr. Loeffner, and they're on the financial side, sent in from the parents. The first question, just kind of a general overall perspective, kind of broad strokes, is how's the pandemic affected finances? I know it's a very broad question on that area, but what's been the biggest issue maybe in that area of finances, and what are some things you've been able to work around through this period?
Yeah, well, early on, we wanted to make sure our employees got paid, in terms of what the state has considered, non-essential or essential. We wanted to make sure that our hourly employees got paid. So the board approved that resolution really early in this process. I think we were the first in the area districts to approve that. As far as the financial impact, we haven't felt that yet. Actually, what we're seeing is some savings. I mean, when you look at buildings being shut down, there's some utility cost savings. There's some fuel cost savings because we're not running buses. The other thing that we've looked at is a lot of people don't know that Greater Clark, we spend about $80,000 to $90,000 a month on subs, substitute teaching costs. So that's $80,000 to $90,000 a month we're not having to pay right now. Now I would rather be paying it and rather be in school, but it is a savings. Now, my worry as a superintendent is not so much the rest of this year and next year, because what we're hearing from the state and Governor Holcomb is, they're not going to cut our funding from what they've guaranteed in the biennium budget for next year. My worry is what happens in that 2021-2022 school year when they do the next or the new biennium budget. How are we going to be impacted? So, that does worry me a little bit, but I think we'll be okay for at least the next year and a half.
Now, I know you just mentioned sub money being able to be saved. Has there been any jobs that have been cut during this process? I know you said it as well, costs, utilities. Those are big things that are able to save. Has there been anything else in that area, parent asked, that have you been able to save, or any jobs cut around that?
No, we have not cut anyone. We've not riffed anyone. We've tried to make sure that our employees are being paid, even though they're not at work. We actually decided to go ahead and pay our coaches, spring coaches, their stipend, because frankly, we don't want to lose those coaches. When we felt like if we didn't pay them what we had already budgeted for, that we may lose a lot of good coaches. They'll go elsewhere. So, we haven't cut anyone. We're not, we haven't riffed anyone, and we don't plan to. We want to keep our staff, and keep things going.
And with that, to follow up, a question from Ms. Hall, as Mr. Loeffner mentioned, paying coaches going forward. There will be a few coaching openings at Jeffersonville High School with the boys basketball program and girls basketball program. Those are open searches. Ms. Hall just taking over as the principal of Jeffersonville High School. What is the latest on those coaching searches, Ms. Hall, and where are you guys at in the process thus far?
Sure. So, yes, we do have our girls basketball and our boys basketball positions open. We have interviewed a number of candidates for our girls' job, and we have narrowed the field down. We have some excellent candidates, a number of them with state finals coaching experience, and have coached numerous Indiana All-Stars. So we're very excited about that. From the boys, we have a number of quality candidates, and we will begin interviewing early next week and have candidates to present to the school board at the May 12th meeting.
For you, making the decision as principal for the next coaches, what are some of the qualities, or maybe the main quality, that you're looking for when you get into an interview process for a coach? What needs to stand out for you to say, okay, this is the person that I want into my school?
Right. So, having a basketball background myself, I really spent, since I moved into this interim role, time watching a number of coaches that we wanted to go after. We were lucky enough to have the girls semi-state here, so I watched some of those coaches just to see what their sideline demeanor was, how they interacted with their players before the game, during the game, after the game, and how their players behaved on the court. I also, took that and challenged our athletic director to do the same throughout the season with our boys program. And so really what we are looking for is someone to be a role model and mentor for our student athletes, but also someone that's engaged in the community and that is very active in our school, that supports our other programs, and someone that's, at football games and volleyball games and encouraging our athletes. So I've been very, very pleased with the candidate pools that we have to choose from.
Yeah, we'll talk about that going more forward. Ms. Hall's background in athletics, taking over as the new principal of Jeffersonville High School. Another question for Mr. Loeffner. This side, going a little bit back to the e-learning, but also to the side of students learning from home, and then whenever we're allowed to come back physically to schools, how will you be able to bridge the gap for e-learning? Will there be after-school programs when school comes back in? Will there be summer programs where people can meet in person? What's the idea on that between you and the school board?
Yeah, this summer, we plan on continuing with summer school, even if we have to do it virtually, especially with our high school students that need to earn credits or make up credits. With our elementary, middle school, we're sort of in a wait and see mode right now. In the fall, what we're planning on doing in order to get our students caught up is really spend some time identifying who those tier 2 or tier 3 students are that are a little behind, and then create some kind of after school tutoring program where we would also supply transportation for those students too. And we would, our schools would identify those students in terms of which students would need to stay. But we feel strongly that at least through the first semester of next year, we want to have some after school tutoring programs going on with transportation, so that students that are a little behind right now, that need some extra help getting caught up, will have that time to do that.
These next couple questions for Mr. Loeffner are based in the area of certifications along with students. The first question is, if you're a little bit of a tough spot, if you're in a spring sport that was offered, obviously now it's canceled, now you don't have PE, you're in a situation where you would get that credit for a spring sport, now you don't. What is the latest on that in terms of spring sports and how you'll handle the PE credits? I know it's obviously something you really can't plan for, but what's the latest on that?
Yeah, well, hopefully you're talking about a freshman or a sophomore. Hopefully it's not a senior, that needs that, because typically they get those PE credits when they're a freshman or sophomore, and they usually do it through athletics. So, if it's a freshman or sophomore, and they continue to compete in a sport, they're going to get that credit eventually anyways. Once they compete, in a sport next year. If it's a senior, that's obviously something we're going to have to work out, with that student in terms of meeting the credit requirement. And we can do that virtually. It may sound odd that you can do PE virtually, but it is something we could do through our platform called Plato. So, we would work through that with students individually.
What are the latest for Prosser students on certifications? Obviously, a lot of kids that are going to go into the workforce after high school. How are they going to work out certifications? I know there's some potential to do online, but some things need to be in person. What's the latest with your all's relationship with Prosser moving forward?
Yeah, we'll continue to work with Prosser. Alan Taylor, the director over there, does a great job. I would encourage any student that's at Prosser that has questions about that to contact their instructor, contact Alan Taylor, and figure out, how are they going to do that testing. I know they're doing some of it virtually, but some of it, if you're a heavy equipment operator, you can't do that virtually in terms of testing. So I know they're working through that at Prosser. So I would encourage the student and the parents, to contact the instructor and get the details on, all right, how do we finish this up in terms of the certification process.
And then to go with that, National Honor Society students that are trying to get in that for their sophomore and junior year, is there a process of when they will know to be in the National Honor Society? Is that something that's been discussed at all with Greater Clark County Schools?
Our counselors, our Lori Stinson, our counseling coordinator, is working on that. We don't have a final plan yet, but that is something we're working on. I think based on the grade data and just what we can get in terms of data from the first semester, we'll be able to put together that National Honor Society list. So I think we'll be fine there. It's just going to take a little time.
And the last question for Mr. Loeffner, that is along the parent side, is for health safety next year. I know we've talked about sanitation throughout this interview and in previous shows, but do you think there'll be different health rules next year for PPE, maybe safety masks? Has there been any discussion about that, maybe going back to school but having to wear masks, or different sanitation rules for students?
Well, I think there will be. I think now will it be a mandate, from the state or from the district? I don't know that we're there yet, but I think a lot of parents will make that decision to make sure their children wear masks, and we're preparing for that. One of the things we're going to do here in the next 2 to 3 weeks is sit down as a cabinet and really plan worst case scenarios in terms of what if they tell us we can't start back, in school with students coming to school. How do we handle that? How do we handle if we do have students back in school? And then also, how do we handle, if this virus is still out there and it's still causing some issues. However, school is back in session, and we have a significant number of parents that are very concerned about sending their child back to school. Do we continue with some parents, to offer that virtual platform, to make sure they stay enrolled with us and enrolled with Greater Clark? That's something, we're going to put together a plan for. We already have, a virtual program that we do put students on. So we feel like that's something we could do with students if parents are really, really concerned about sending their child back to school in the fall there. We could have some students still stay on the virtual platform and stay enrolled in Greater Clark until things are safer, But we're just going to wait and see. But we are going to at least plan out some worst case scenarios as a district.
So things that have updated, we talked about throughout this interview, the sanitation process, also some coaching searches, and how Greater Clark's leading the way in e-learning. And that's when I want to turn this conversation over to Ms. Hall, the new principal of Jeffersonville High School here on School Talk. Ms. Hall, certainly an interesting time to become principal. I know we talked with Mr. Loeffner in the past about a very busy first-year superintendent with all the pandemic. Now you're just taking over as the principal. Give us a little bit about your background in education. You were the interim principal earlier this year, but before that, as an assistant principal and teacher, and how you came to Jeffersonville High School.
Sure. So I've spent the last 16 years in Greater Clark County Schools, the last 2.5 as the assistant principal here before moving into the interim position. Before that, 13 at Parkview Middle School in various roles as a special ed teacher and then as a behavior coordinator. Before that, I spent 10 years at another local high school as a head basketball coach, assistant athletic director, and history and social studies teacher.
Now, for you, as we mentioned, the last couple of years being an assistant principal, what did you learn in that role as assistant principal that you think will help you going in to now having the head role of principal? What were you able to gather and learn from out those couple of years behind Julie Strait, who was the principal at the time, now the CTE coordinator, that you think will be a benefit going in to now being the head principal of Jeffersonville High School?
Sure. I think the biggest benefit was working through the academy model, serving as the assistant principal, but the principal of the Freshman Academy, which is the largest academy here at Jeffersonville High School with over 500 students. It allowed us to really take a look and dive into, through our weekly meetings and our work with our teams, our 3 teams in there, was to get in there and really break down and look at targeting those students and really knowing where every student that starts here at Jeffersonville High School is academically and what their needs are. And then as we kind of move them out of Freshman Academy and on into their career academies, being able to say that, okay, this student has some deficits or could really use a little extra help in the English area, whether that's writing or being able to comprehension with their math skills. And so really handing them off to business academies with a very solid plan, some of them having their own individual student plan that we just kind of created for remediation, but also accelerating those students that are very gifted and talented and are hard workers in the classroom. So I think through that work, it really allowed me to kind of develop some skills that maybe if I were at a school where I wasn't necessarily the leader of my own academy, your school within a school, I would be lacking, because you have to make tough decisions. You have to have difficult professional conversations that maybe you wouldn't have only as an assistant principal. So I think that has really prepared me for this role. And then I would have to say that in the first 90 days, when you have a sewer line collapse in the last hour of school, and you have to make a quick decision that you're going to go to e-learning and make a plan for the next day, when you have a water main break 120 minutes before tip-off on boys basketball senior night, and you have to make a tough call on whether to relocate or not play it, and then a worldwide pandemic that shuts down schools across the country. I think that hopefully we have some smooth sailing moving forward.
Now, for parents that are coming in and students that are going to be Jeffersonville High School members, and also the staff, people that are going to work with you day to day, what would you try to tell them is your philosophy? Obviously, I've known you for a couple of years being the assistant principal. What is something that's very important to you to get across to the students, the teachers, and the parents of, hey, this is how I want to run the school, and these are some of the things that are important to me that I believe will make Greater Clark County Schools and Jeffersonville High School a better place to be?
Right. Well, definitely. I think the one thing I really want us to focus on is that we talk college and career readiness with our teachers, with our students when they walk into school for that academic component in the classroom. And I think that needs to be the umbrella on everything we do every day we're in here, from how we dress, from how we behave, from everything that maybe students aren't seeing, looking at a cell phone policy. And when we go out into the workforce, we want to model here for our students, but also have them engage in a way that is college and career ready across the board, not just from that academic standpoint. And I think overall, my philosophy is just the sense of pride for people that are Jeff students or work here. I was at a basketball game when we played New Albany this past year, and after we beat them, and standing on the court, kind of just watching our students and athletes celebrate, and some New Albany adults, older than myself, walked through and made a comment directed at our students that, it's okay, they won. They still have to go back and go to school and live in Jeffersonville. And that just infuriated me, because I thought, that's ridiculous. We have great kids. We have great things to offer. And so I want our students and our staff to just take such pride in what they do, and also to have a chip on their shoulder that we've got something to prove, that there are people that are like that out there, but we're doing great things here. And I choose Jeff every day. And as Mr. Lofter can attest to that, a few years ago when I had the opportunity to make a really tough decision on whether to stay at Charlestown when I was given that position, or when Jeff came open, and I had to follow my heart because I'm a Jeff girl. This is my school and I love it here. And I want to see that in every student and every staff member that we have here.
And what are three things, going back with your passion for Jeffersonville High School, being somebody that's been around the community for a long time, if say things get back to somewhat normal in the near future, what are three things, I know you made some early changes here as the interim, that you want to make full-time effective by the end of next year, things that are at the top of your list for students and parents to know, hey, this is what we're trying to change going forward, and I think this is important to me that we need to do differently at Jeffersonville High School? Right.
Well, I think one of the first priorities is going to look at our students that are what I kind of call those bubble students, ones that we really want to push our students to increase our academic honors diplomas. I think that we do a lot of really wonderful things, but I think that we need to take a step back and look at and identify those areas where maybe some of our students that fall short, and really put some interventions and some steps in place to really increase those numbers. So that is a priority for myself. The second one is I would like to see our enrollment grow. I know that when I was here, we were well over 2,400 students. So I want to explore ways to keep students here, to attract new students. I think that that's getting down and doing work in the middle school, but really in the elementary school. They're bringing those kids in. I know for myself, coming from not a Greater Clark County school, when I was an elementary student, the first time I stepped into this gym on a Friday night and I saw a basketball game and everything, I was determined I was going to be a Red Devil. And I think that is the focus we have to have in recruiting those kids and keeping our own and making it so everybody wants to be a Red Devil that's in here. And then on the bigger picture for myself is just with all the new jobs coming up that 62 corridor, with all the businesses, I want to make people say, I want to live somewhere where my daughter, my son is going to go to Jeff High School. So telling realtors, we want to make sure we're living in this district and appealing. And part of that, too, is also promoting ourselves because we're doing great things. We just have to get that message out there.
And this is for Mr. Loeffner. Obviously, we just mentioned Ms. Hall working with you in the past at Charlestown. You being the one that has to make the decision to put her in the interim role and then eventually hire her as the full-time principal. What stood out to you with you on her time at Charlestown, then now moving to assistant principal and eventually principal at Jeffersonville High School, that made you say, hey, this is somebody that I want as a leader in our greater Clark County schools? What stood out to you about Ms. Hall?
Well, number one, she's very student-centered. She will make decisions based on what's best for students, and that's number one with me. Going back to what you were talking about earlier about hiring coaches. To me, when you hire a varsity basketball coach or varsity football coach, they need to be more than just a coach. I don't want to hire coaches that feel like I'm just in the building to coach. You got to be more than that. You got to be a good teacher. You got to be a good coach. You have to be a good person. And you have to work with students at a high level, and hold them accountable, for what they do during the school day academically, but also, in their sport. But Pam stood out because she's student-centered. She's also not afraid to make a tough decision. And when you're a principal at a big high school, you're going to make some tough decisions. You're not going to make everybody happy. But when you combine those two things together in terms of being student-centered and not being afraid to make a tough decision, you're going to move things in the right direction. The other thing I like about Ms. Hall is that she's very climate culture. She pays attention to that. That she wants to make sure any building that she works in has a good climate, a good culture. And that it's a safe, secure place to be. That students appreciate the school. And that's important. I mean, it's very important that students come to school, that parents send their kids to school, knowing that, hey, they're safe, they're secure, they have a principal that's going to make sure that the environment there is very good.
Now, I know you have a great relationship with Ms. Straight, who's now the CT coordinator, but how much easier does it make for you going forward, having somebody that you worked with previously at Charlestown day-to-day with, really for both of you guys? It seems like communication would be at an even higher level because you've spent time together previously.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And I have that with almost every principal. I really do with all the principals. To me, that's part of this job that I have as superintendent is you have to be willing to communicate with all your principals about the good, the bad, and the ugly, I guess you could say. And you just have to be upfront and honest about what's going on, and if there's a problem, then let's get together and try to fix it. You can't hide from anything, and you just have to talk through those things. And Pam knows that about me, and I know that about her, that if there's an issue, we're going to talk through it. We're going to figure out, what's the best route to take care of the problem. And I try to do that with all the principals.
And for the last question of this edition of School Talk goes to Ms. Halls. I know you've said the passion to be at Jeffersonville, being a Jeff girl, somebody that's been a part of the community for a long time. But what inspires you in general to teach? I know you say you had a coaching background, somebody that's very involved in athletics, then from going to be teacher to now head of the school. What inspires you to be around students and teachers throughout this such a long period? You and Mr. Loeffner both involved in Greater Clark County schools.
Well, when I was probably in my early 20s, right out of college and getting into education, and I had to look and think, what was my dream job, going forward? When I had to look down down 10 years, 15 years down the road, to me, I would have said my dream job at that time would have been to be an athletic director at Jeff High School. And then you get married and you have children and you see that, being out 6 nights a week is not the best to be a mom. And so as I kind of worked through there, it's kind of funny how it changed. But I found that in my time at Parkview, that those maybe underserved populations of students, maybe the ones that are struggle a little more behaviorally at school, are really those kids that have never really had maybe a positive experience at school. I found that I was drawn to them. And you take those same principles from coaching and you apply them in the classroom and in those positions where you work with those students, and you see, success and results, and it kind of still gives you that, I guess, high, if you will, of being a coach. And as I have moved on, what I have found is stepping into this role as an interim is the closest thing I've found to being a college athlete. The daily challenges, the pace, the excitement, the problem solving that goes into it. And so I've been pleasantly surprised. And even with the challenges, I find that when we're in crisis mode, that I feel like that's probably when I'm the best, making those quick decisions and having to make those decisions and doing what's best for the students and keeping that at the forefront.
A lot of changes going on throughout the world and in Greater Clark County Schools, and certainly things have been negative at times throughout the world and things going on, but on the positive, things going very well, it seems, for Greater Clark County Schools. As we said, Ms. Hall, now the new principal of Jeffersonville High School, voted in last Tuesday, here with Ms. Pam Hall and the superintendent of Greater Clark County Schools, Mark Loeffner. If you need any more updates or things that are going on that changes day to day, look at the Greater Clark County Schools websites and social media pages. We appreciate you guys coming in today for another edition of School Talk. Thank you, Ms. Hall and Mr. Loeffner.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Appreciate it.
This episode will be replayed on 1 and 7 o'clock p.m. every day on TV Digital 184, along with 98.5 FM and WJHI.com. Thank you for tuning in on April the 20th for another edition of School Talk. Thank you. This has been 98.5 WJHI LP Jeffersonville, April the 20th. Thank you. Stay safe and have a great day.